I'll get vulnerable for a second, that I have a kink.
What he needs to do is get down on his knees.
Okay, you are talking to the kinkiest crowd there is.
As soon as I saw the Dune book on your shelf, I was thinking about how much I love the Bene Gesserits. And if you don't have a 10,000 year plan that you're working to enact with a, secretive order of sisters, are you even living?
Would you say that you just existentially cleared your blue balls?
Oh my God, my favorite trope to read is enemies to lovers.
He's just taking from me. He's just taking. He's a vampire.
Sounds so kinky. Like, I just want someone to tell me I'm a good girl.
I have always avoided shadow work because I don't like looking at things that aren't pretty.
Kristen's mad at me.
You have an existential kink.
I'm Kristen.
And I'm Maddie.
We're sisters and heavy readers.
Join us every single week to talk stories, interview authors, and collab with fellow book nerds.
Welcome to the Kristen Mad Show. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the show. We have a very special guest here today. We have Carolyn Elliott. She is the author of Existential Kink. Thank you so much for coming on our podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me.
We are so thrilled to have you. Kristen, I think, reached out to you like 2 months ago. She has just been unable to put your book down. She got me to read it. Her husband read it. Like, it's all part of our ethos now. So we're so excited to talk to you. We have questions. We have some concerns. We have lots of praise for the book. And we really want everyone to read this and find this at a time in their life when they need it. So anyway, we're very excited to get into it.
I'm very excited to be here with you. I'm so happy that it's blossoming so much for you. Yay.
So before we get into your amazing book, we love to play Two Truths and a Lie with our guest, just as a little icebreaker. So go ahead, tell us 3 things about you, and we will guess.
Okay, 3 things about me. I was initiated into a secret esoteric order when I was 11 years old as a Vestal Virgin. I have a parakeet named Bobby. I currently lead one of the largest and most spiritually alive mystery schools in the world, probably the only publicly available mystery school in the Western tradition. Those are my 3 things.
I want every single one of those to be true. I hope none of those was a lie. Also, I want to come to school. So
yeah, I know. I'm like, academic setting, that's our favorite.
So wait, which one do you think?
I don't know why the parakeet one actually checks out for me. You're giving parakeet vibes.
But of all the ones, I think I want that to be the lie, because I do want her to have been initiated into an esoteric cult.
I know. But should we go with that one? That I would say is the most outlandish, wouldn't you say? I believe that she is a teacher. Like the school thing checks out.
Okay, we're going to say we think the first one was a lie, but it makes us sad.
The parakeet is a lie. I've never had a parakeet.
Normally we recommend books with dragons, okay? Usually we recommend sci-fi books, but
I love it. Yeah, as soon as I saw the Dune book on your shelf, I was thinking about how much I love the Bene Gesserits. And if you don't have a 10,000 year plan that you're working to enact with a, secretive order of sisters, are you even living? What are you doing?
Living at all? Like
peak living.
Yes.
Okay, for everybody who just started listening to this podcast and they're like, what the hell is going on here, guys? I'm actually going to let Carolyn share a little bit about her book that we found and who it's for, what kind of gifts could be inside. For somebody who's read every single Esther Hicks book ever written, every single Wayne Dyer book ever written, all the agreement books, like, listen, I have a kink for this stuff, okay? I have always avoided shadow work because I don't like looking at things that aren't pretty. I like to pretend they don't exist. But the empowerment that I have found, so if anybody resonates with that, the empowerment that I have found personally reading a book that, yes, talks about shadows, but in such a fun, sexy, comical way, it was the gateway drug I needed to be empowered to level up. So thank you for making a kick-ass book. It's so good. Will you tell everybody what they can get from your book? What's it about?
Yes, thank you. I'm so happy you've enjoyed it. And you are enjoying it. Let's see, Existential Kink. So it's a book about how to make the unconscious conscious through a deep level of approval. And actually, approval is a rather weak word for it. So there's many ways of doing shadow work, and it is becoming a more popular topic, and I'm grateful for that. And it's all valuable and it's all important. What I really love about existential kink is that it is fast. And it doesn't require anybody to go into their deepest, darkest memories. It doesn't require, being able to understand the Byzantine language of your dreams. All it requires is becoming aware of a pattern in your life that keeps repeating. Things like, boy, no matter what I do, I can't seem to make more than a certain amount of money each month. Boy, I always seem to get into relationships with somebody who reminds me of a parent of mine who I had problems with. Wow, I seem to have creative blocks, or I seem to have these health issues. Pretty much universally, we humans have, at some level, an attraction, a pleasure in even these very painful, frustrating things. And for me, my breakthrough with it came around money. For my 20s, I was living on a shoestring. I was a graduate student. I got my PhD in critical and cultural studies at the University of Pittsburgh, and I taught. I was like doing freelance writing gigs and living on couches and dumpster diving and standing in line for government like food bank handouts. I was in a bad situation, and there were people that I went to high school with or college with who had nice jobs and had money and had houses, and I was like so ashamed and so freaked out all the time, and just like, if I was supposed to be so smart. If I'm so smart, why am I like basically homeless? What's going on? And I loved all of the law of attraction stuff too. For my PhD, I had read all of this psychology. I'd read tons of Jung and Freud, and I knew that there was such a thing as unconscious desire. And so I was sort of sitting one day as I was standing in line. It was freezing cold. I was waiting for my handout of government cheese. And I was like, could it be that there is some part of me, if my desires create reality, could it be that some part of me, an unconscious part of me, meaning a part of me that is completely disassociated from my ego, that I have no awareness of, really, really desires and really, really enjoys this situation? Me, I had never super been into like bedroom BDSM stuff, but I did know that there were people out there who were super into it, and that
Right.
they create these consensual scenes, and they have these agreements, and they have these roles. And that's usually referred to as like a sexual kink or a bedroom kink. And as I realized how much pleasure I felt in nobody wanting to pay me anything ever, I was like, oh no, Carolyn, you don't just have a bedroom kink, you have an existential kink. I couldn't deny it. It was true. It was just absolutely true. That but it was such dissonance, because in my conscious mind, I want to be rich. I want to have millions of dollars. I want people to pay me thousands of dollars for coaching. That's not what my body was saying. My body was like, "Whoa, we are turned on by this scarcity situation." And, had read enough psychology that I knew that if you shame something, if you deny it, if you blame yourself for it, that just drives it further into the unconscious. So here was this thing that I was beginning to have this dawning awareness of, this unconscious pleasure in scarcity and rejection and being unwanted and devalued. And I said to myself, well, I'm just going to set aside time each day to just be with my feelings of being broke and unwanted and let those feelings arise and just enjoy them as much as I enjoy them, and just let that be, because that's what's happening. Very quickly through this practice of just allowing that previously unconscious pleasure to become conscious and to be felt, my whole identity changed. And as soon as that switch sort of flipped, it was like my perception changed. And I started having all these ideas of things that I could do to get clients, things that I could do to grow my business. And within, I think it was 2.5 months, I was making $10,000 a month, and I'd moved to Bali. And I was, just living the high life, traveling around. And then I've been doing that ever since. And,
So, would you say that you just existentially cleared your blue balls? And so then you had got what you needed from that experience. So then you were free to change that experience if you wanted to without continuing to give yourself blue balls.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, I climaxed the situation. I consciously and deliberately, without judgment, without shame, let myself experience the thrill of being as broke and as insecure and uncertain and rejected and whatever as I was. I just felt it. But then there was also, the anxiety, like another bill came in the mail. What am I going to do with that? I tried to use my debit card going out to lunch with a friend, and I can't pay the bill. My friend had to pay for me. There was all these, it's not like it was, there was a lot of challenge to it. That's sort of the underlying argument with existential kink, is that human life, incarnation in this physical world, necessarily involves hot and cold, night and day, um, pain and pleasure. Our souls are saying, yes, I want to experience all of it. I want to experience the rejection. I want to experience the acceptance. I want to experience the scarcity. I want to experience the bounty, the pain, the pleasure, the hot, the cold, the night, the day. Sign me up. Take me on the ride. The grief, the success, all of it.
I don't know. It's fascinating. I'm so glad you had this life experience so that you could share it with me and I could be like, that exists on planet Earth. Hell yeah.
It does.
If everything in my life, my relationships, my job, my house, all the things, if all of that is evidence of wanting in me, right? Like I am a magnet for the things that I want, conscious or unconscious.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, then I'm living my dream life. I have everything I want. Right. So I'm like, okay, yeah, like my subconscious and my conscience are getting off on my reality right now. That's great.
Mhm.
But why would I ever feel motivated then to make a change or to start something new if I'm already living it?
Yeah, beautiful, wonderful question. I like to say that desire evolves through fulfillment. So, one way of thinking of it is it can be that I let myself experience the pleasure and the fulfillment that's already present in my life being exactly as it is, my body being exactly as it is, everything just the way it is. And once I experience that fulfillment, there's just sort of a natural growth process that's like, okay, cool. I'm curious. What's the next thing? Like, I've received this. It's so wonderful. What else is there?
Mm-hmm.
The earth already has everything that it wants, but it keeps changing and it keeps blossoming flowers and little baby animals and all sorts of fun stuff. And I think that, we're the same, as we can be completely fulfilled and have these different seasons of perfection that have, different faces, different shapes. And then we can just morph and go on to the next thing.
Oh,
And it
I
doesn't
like
have to
that.
be, yeah, it can just be a growth instead of like I must fix myself and my life. And it's just an unfolding instead.
It like gives me an idea of like if someone was listening and they're like, look, I hate my job. I hate my job. I hate my boss. I hate everything about getting up and going to work. It's absolutely awful. And then they were to practice the existential kink meditation around that and come to some understanding that some part of them, an unconscious part, actually loves the misery of being under
Mhm.
someone's thumb and being stressed out and always being behind and having to get up in the morning when they don't feel like it. And all of these things wrapped up in it. They're like getting off on hating this. Like they just they love, there's some part of it, and then they practice some radical acceptance around it. I to answer Kristen's question, I guess I follow the line of thinking that it's like, well, at some point you like get off, you're done with that position. Like to use the bedroom metaphor, it's like, well, yeah, I loved getting off doggy style for like 6 months and now I want to try something new. So it's like you kind of get over the misery kink of being in that job, and so you can move on. But there's another part of, I'm bringing in a different life philosophy in this, so I'm going to ask you about this, Carolyn. I have this idea about alignment where I always use the word alignment like it's this magic word, where if I'm in alignment, then I basically feel like I'm pulsing with magic. That circumstances in life and the way I'm experiencing my life feels magical when I am in alignment. And ever since I read your book, that definition has gotten really crystal clear to me, that I'm like, alignment is that my conscious self and my unconscious self are in alignment. So what is interesting to me is, like, when there's an area of suffering, I'll use for me, I'll get vulnerable for a second, that I have a kink, an unconscious kink about people being mad at me. So my conscious self hates this feeling of like, oh my God, people are mad. Kristen's mad at me. So when we get together to work today, like, I need to be really gentle because otherwise Kristen's going to be mad at me. Or my husband's coming home, I better have dinner ready because otherwise he's going to be mad at me. And I hate this feeling in my conscious self. I'm like doing everything I can to avoid people getting mad at me. Well, I've read your book.
She loves it.
And I realized that there is an unconscious part of me. Follow me here. It's a little weird, but there's an unconscious part of me that believes that I am good if my life is hard. So then I create this reality of, oh, when people are mad at me, that makes my life hard, which means I must be good. That, like, oh, good. Yep, I'm a good girl. People are mad at me. My life is hard. I'm a good girl. And boy, do I get off on it. And it's so weird. It's very interesting. So what is interesting then is what I am able to, when I'm marrying these two schools of thought, what I am thinking is, okay, my conscious self really doesn't like this, but my unconscious self does. So there's just an alignment mismatch right here. And eventually they're going to get in alignment. Either my conscious self is going to get good with this and be like, she just likes this, we're just going to let her have it. Or my unconscious self is finally just going to get satisfied with it and be like, yep, got enough of that, got enough of people getting mad at me and stroking myself for this. And so we're going to try a new way, and she's going to move here, or they're going to meet in the middle, and then alignment is going to occur. So I wonder what you think of that, Carolyn.
The alignment idea is precisely so. That I like to call it having a unified will. And when we have a unified will, that's exactly what we're experiencing. Is, like you said, everything feels magical. It feels like, whew, I'm right where I should be. I'm right. I'm having exactly what I want to be having. This is so delightful. So a lot of times that's what people are trying to do with affirmations. They're like, nobody is ever mad at me. Everybody likes me. And, changes can be made in that way. But oftentimes I think, people sometimes get into like law of attraction teachings, and they try to change their unconscious programming by getting it to line up with their conscious desires. And they find that they're not able to do it. It's like the unconscious mind is pretty strong. So I think the kind of fun innovation of existential kink is that getting off an existential kink really involves an absolutely insane, total death level humbling of the conscious mind to the unconscious mind. So it involves, one way I think of it is like the unconscious mind is like this beautiful courtly lady. And the conscious mind is like this knight, like charging ahead, like I have a mission, I know what I'm doing, I know what I want. But, the knight needs the lady to be on board with him, to give him the strength that he needs for his mission. And he can't get that by like badgering her with affirmations or whatever else. Yeah. Like it doesn't work. What he needs to do is get down on his knees and tell her in the deepest, most sincere, most unironic, heartfelt way how beautiful she is. Purely. Not demanding anything from her, not trying to get anything from her, just sheer heartfelt celebration. Part of what makes existential kink such an intense practice is that it is a practice of being like, actually, I'm willing to die here. I'm willing to die into this sensation of somebody being upset with me. And I'm willing to let my resistance to it just die. And I'm just here on my knees, humbly celebrating it because it is this lady. It is the lady, and the lady is doing what she wants to do. And she has a mind of her own and a will of her own. And I'm going to stop arguing with it. I'm going to stop questioning it. I'm going to stop trying to use her for my quest. I'm just going to be here in honor of her. So it's like this deep, courtly, humbling. And what I've noticed can happen when we find that level of willingness to just completely surrender. And when that love happens, then, the lady is on board and the quest can be fulfilled and everything starts to happen differently.
Well, it's like an integration. I think
Mhm.
that what Kristen was saying in the beginning about how she has always felt a resistance to shadow work, and that, it's so negative, and if
Mm.
what you focus on grows, you don't want to focus on the negative. I think that there is this need, what you just said, if the knight and the lady come together and birth something new, that's integration. And shadow work is actually not about banishing our shadows. It's about integrating all the parts of ourselves and accepting all of the parts of ourselves, because any repression or hiding or shame is just going to make us feel fragmented. And then we are going to create fragmentation in the world.
Very well said.
My ego has gotten so big at some points in my life that I forget that these other parts exist because, like, it's embarrassing, right? But as soon as you just do the embarrassing thing and say hi to it and make friends with it, I guess you guys are talking about them as lovers. I think of them as like making friends with somebody you thought you were a frenemy with, you know?
Yeah.
And it just
Beautiful.
it's so gentle and loving. So it just helps me day to day, guys, like go into the world being super kind to little Kristen and being like, "Kristen, why are you judging that mom for keeping her baby in the store while it's screaming? Like, why do you care? Why do you care?" And I care a lot about a lot of things, so it's helped me let go of that, like, that control, that judgment. Guys, it is so fun to feel free.
I think when you're doing the practice, if I were to say, try to say, gosh, I love it when people are mad at me, that does not feel true in my body. I am very attached to the egoic, conscious part of me
Right.
that hates people being mad at me. But if I follow the path down to, like, well, why might I like people being mad at me? What do I like? What does my unconscious really like? And my unconscious really likes to feel good, like good girl.
Mhm.
I love that. I mean, that sounds so kinky. Like, I just want someone to tell me I'm a good girl. And I've just created a narrative where the way that that is most true for me
Mm.
is when my life is hard. When I do really hard things that are really painful, then somebody tells me, good girl, you endured your pain. So if we were taking this into a BDSM scenario, it's not like that I would love the feeling of being whipped, but I would love the feeling of enduring my whipping and then my lover telling me, good girl, you did a good girl,
Mm.
a good job
Hot.
doing that. And so it's not like I love the whipping. It's not that I love people being mad at me. It's for you, maybe it's not that you love when your boss treats you like shit, but maybe you love going home at the end of the day and taking a bubble bath and having a glass of wine and being like, yep, I survived that asshole. And you love that feeling so much that
I'm
you
a
just stay in.
survivor. I
Yeah.
ain't
Like
gonna give
I
up.
do think that there sometimes is some excavating to do if,
Yeah.
if you don't necessarily get off on the top level thing of, like, I hate, maybe you don't even, maybe it's so hard for you to say, I love being poor. Maybe you don't, but maybe you do love people taking care of you. And so you've created a situation where when I'm poor, my mom takes care of me or my friend pays for my lunch, and I love that feeling. And so I
Mm.
just continue. And I think once you get to the feeling you love and you can practice this acceptance and this love of the feeling that you love, you can find an aligned way to get that feeling that isn't as disjointed from your conscious self. So if I love to be told I'm a good girl, I can still have that forever. I don't necessarily have to get it from people being mad at me.
Maddie, I'm so glad that you've made this point about the excavation, and it's so absolutely true. And I think that part of the collective human shadow that I think about a lot these days, feeling sort of a collective addiction to feeling victimized by external circumstances.
Oh my
Whatever,
gosh, this is me.
and really believing and really feeling like I can't be truly happy until the manifest world and other people are just in the right configuration that I need them to be. So, another way of thinking about existential kink or doing existential kink is just deciding I'm going to be orgasmically delighted with my life no matter what the situation is, no matter, how it's appearing. And this is very classic law of attraction approach is, what, whatever is happening, I am just gonna give myself access to that utter delight, utter joy, completely, I like to say insane, because to me, it seems like, my rational mind is like, well, Carolyn, we can't possibly feel happy if somebody's disappointed with us, but it's like, no,
Right.
actually, you can't. Is bondage, just being in bondage, being trapped, when I'm making love with my husband, I like him to hold my hands down, makes it more fun. And I like that with the universe. I like to feel trapped and bound by other people's experience of me, by whatever. I just love that feeling of being trapped.
The audience
And
listening is gonna get this, Carolyn. You are speaking to a bunch of readers who love some dark romance. Okay,
yeah.
you are talking to the kinkiest crowd there is, and we are proud. So
yeah.
yeah, I totally. It would be so interesting, Carolyn, if we ever got you on like a group session where girls could tell you what kind of romance they like.
Mm.
And I wonder
And then
how
I can
much
tell
it
them about their
correlates.
lives.
I bet it would correlate so much to their existential kinks. Just what you just said. Like, you love bondage, and how much do we love feeling limited sometimes? And there's probably something under that. When I feel limited, I don't feel as responsible. Or when I feel limited, I feel like I can understand my world and it doesn't feel so big and overwhelming, or whatever. I mean, there's probably
Oh,
stuff under that, but I bet if we looked into girls'
yes.
little
The amount
preferences
of women, me included, that their favorite trope is enemies to lovers. Listen, they are affirming. I realized this the other day. I said, why do I feel like I'm either in love with my husband or he is my mortal enemy? Oh my God, my favorite trope to read in every fucking book is enemies to lovers, because I love a makeup. Okay, I don't want it to be good all the time. Boring. Boring. Who wants it to be good all the time? Gross. Boring.
Maddie.
No,
I want it to be good all the time. That's me. But anyways.
but once you see these things, you just go, oh, well, so I am getting what I want. I have manifest. So the girl in me who was like manifestation, law of attraction, I was always feeling really bad. Like I was a bad person because bad things would happen to me. My relationship wasn't easy. I'm doing something wrong. I'm not attracting correctly. But I'm like, no, you are attracting beautifully, Kristen. You actually are magical because you got
Oh,
exactly what you actually like.
this is huge in terms of like things that turn me on. Steamy novels, The Interview with a Vampire, right? Vampire stuff. Okay, love vampire stuff. Okay, I had this thing with my husband for years where I was like, he's a parasite. He's just taking from me. He's just taking, and blah blah blah. And then like one day I realized, I was like, he's a vampire.
And you know what? We're laughing about it because it really, like, it can feel like the most debilitating, miserable thing in your life until you just realize it's actually kind of kinky. And then you just crack up because you're just like, oh my God, I'm such a powerful manifester.
No, truly. And once you take your power back, then I feel like the change, which I was asking in my question, like, how do I know I'm going to change if I already have what I like? There is a part of me that's like, I think I've gotten off on a few things enough. Like they're not resonating in my body like they used to. Like, oh yeah, I like this. I'm like, I just don't really know actually if I like this anymore. Like it's like a rebirth season. So I'm
Mhm.
trying to find new kinks. Like, okay, what does get you off, Kristen? What does make you feel like that buzz and it could be that I'm 33. It could be like so many things going on just in the world right now. There's so many shifts happening, which I love new. I love shifts, but it's fun to me to think, why don't we just get off on something as long as it feels good? And then just get out of that car and get into the one next to it. Like you don't have to
Brilliant.
get off on the same shit forever.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love that you're bringing this up because this is so powerful. Because, indeed, so like one of the things directly connected to what we were talking about for years, I would get turned on by like being devalued in some way in a relationship or like a bedroom, like really, really dark devaluing. Gradually, I worked on it. I let the pleasure of that rise in a conscious, approving way. It lost its charge for me. And then I found I had another edge for like, I started to get curious. Can I get or have orgasmic deep pleasure in being super highly valued in just being infinitely just praised and worshiped and loved. Like, can I let that be the really hot new thing? And I found that I could. And the more that I did that, the more that I found, my business following grew, and the people, the general vibrations in my relationship got a lot sweeter and smoother. It's not like everybody's down kissing my feet all the time, but it's an experience of being highly valued instead of being devalued.
From a collective standpoint, you touch on this in your book, that there's things like war atrocities or genocides or, massive rape gangs, things like this, that I think someone who's challenging this or having a hard time wrapping their mind around this would be like, okay, so the Jews who got rounded up and put in Auschwitz, they wanted that? Like, what?
Mhm.
Like, they had a kink around being tortured? And I think you cover this in your book, that it's, I mean, I'll let you respond to that. For those who have real challenges around the collective experiences and
Mhm.
atrocities and terrors in our world, what would you say to that challenge?
So, when applying the existential kink meditation, I would only suggest applying that to something that seems to be a personal pattern of repeating experiences in one's personal life. So, for example, I can only make $1,000 a month. I don't know why, no matter what I do. I keep getting attracted to this person who's like my asshole dad. I don't know why, no matter what I do. Obviously, so that's the level at which I would suggest that people work. Sometimes when people hear about existential kink, they immediately want to try to integrate the trauma of the Holocaust using existential kink. I'm like, no, dude, try with your annoyance with your job. Start there. That's the place. Because ultimately, our personal shadows do absolutely relate to the human collective shadow. So, for example, like we started talking about earlier, I do think that one of the deepest things in the human collective shadow unconscious is an addiction to feeling victimized by other people and, getting into a condition of blame, resentment, hatred surrounding our situation and projecting that onto somebody else. So in Germany, in that situation in World War II, there were apparently people in Germany who decided, this group of people, the Jews, we feel angry. We're, in a bad economic situation. We want to blame them for our suffering. And tragically, they blamed that group of people for their suffering. They took that out on them. And that was absolutely devastating and horrible and reprehensible. British people, Celts, Anglo-Saxons were colonized by the Romans in about around 1000 AD. Colonized, completely taken out of their tribal life, completely taken out of their indigenous traditions. And, gradually those people who'd been traumatized and colonized by the Romans went and traumatized and colonized all around the world, including in the what's now the United States. They took Native Americans away from their tribal traditions and did to them the same thing that was done to them by the Romans. It is so sad and it's so deep, and there's been so much unspeakable horror that's been wrought that we humans have been doing to each other. And so I do think that the healing of the collective shadow of, what we could call evil, healing, I think, comes when one by one, on an individual basis, we as individuals lose our attraction to that vibration of identifying chiefly, I'm with that anger and that blame and that shame, and I'm going to take this out on somebody else. This has to be somebody else's fault. I cannot be completely responsible for this. And instead, what I see with existential kink and other integration approaches is saying, you know what? I'm going to do the crazy thing. I'm going to take complete responsibility for my experience. It's just, here I am. This is happening. And I'm not going to keep passing on the evil by radiating blame or resentment anywhere. So I have endless hope for this world. I think that we are on the precipice of this deep, heart open self responsibility and moving out of the shadow of victimhood and projection and having to hurt and blame and kill other people, coming to an end. I like to see it as moving from having a collective unconscious to having a collective consciousness.
Oh, Carolyn, that is
I know. I'm like,
so
oh,
beautiful. We feel most alignment in the approach that the more we can just absorb and not react, the better. And that I was just thinking there's this fantasy book that was my favorite book of the year last year. It's the third book in the Live Ship Traders trilogy. Our listeners will know it's my favorite, but it made me weep at the end because there's a character who I would describe as irredeemable. He has been traumatized and has perpetuated the trauma cycle, and he is irredeemable. And so it's interesting because as a reader, you hate him, and characters you love have been victimized by him, and the characters that you love want vengeance. They want vengeance, but something in you as the reader and the way that it's written, it will do nothing but perpetuate it if the characters you love take vengeance. And I really don't want to spoil it. So, but essentially the theme around it is that kind of trauma cycle only ends when it can be absorbed and accepted, not necessarily dismissed and forgiven, but absorbed and accepted as part of the life experience and as part of how life goes sometimes. And it's just like dissolved in a way. It's just absorbed is what I would say. And so I think that's so powerful. And we were just talking about the collective and personal stuff this morning, and I was thinking the simplest way that I can define what I think is going on is I think that our individual consciousness has been so, for decades and decades, has been so influenced by external forces, by our politicians, by our teachers, by our influences and our systems, and all these systems we set up and created, even systems like around health, like eat this many macros and work out this much and then you'll be healthy, and make this much money and have this much in your 401k and then you'll be stable and successful. Own a home and then you'll be successful. Have 2 kids, get married, be in a heterosexual relationship, you'll be happy. And there's all these systems and all of these rules that have been given to us, and our consciousness has just absorbed them and been like, okay. And then if our unconscious wants anything else, we repress it. And what I think is happening in our cultural shift is, instead of us, I think we're all no longer getting off on the systems that have been handed down to us, even though they were useful and purposeful for the time that we had them. And I think what is happening now with the collective is the individual is rising, and our unconsciouses will not be silenced anymore. And instead, we're going to be called into this radical accountability where we do look at our shadows and we look at our whole selves and we look at all of the things that we need and we want, and we create new systems from that place. Instead of being told by the systems who we should be, we are going to be creating new systems to put out. And so there's a lot of accountability in that. And what you were just saying, Carolyn, is like, it is important to do our shadow work and to get really in touch with ourselves, not because it will manifest $1 million and a happy life for us, although it might. It's really important for us to do that work because that work is what's creating the collective experience.
Absolutely.
And I feel really motivated about it.
Well, and Maddie too has a really hard time doing anything in her life until like her mind and her soul are in alignment. So for her to like have like whenever she has one of these moments where it's like zing and everything just whoop, is locked into place, all of a sudden like things expand in our work, right? All of a sudden our relationships thriving. Like you see things start to bloom all around you because there's just no more of this like, where are we going? What is our purpose? And for us being like, we love epic fantasy. So we love like high stakes, huge impact, save the world. Like we need that. And we don't know how to do it as like 30 something year olds in Midwest and United States. But when we're like, well, we'll just help the fucking conscience, like the collective conscious of the planet. That's what we'll do.
Ladies, that is the battlefield.
I am now under the impression that there is a societal shame. I don't even want to use woo-woo words. I do think that there is a societal pressure to be incredibly palatable to everyone. And I think that there is a kink in literally everyone that is so tired of being palatable and being acceptable to everyone. Because, I mean, we also all want to be fucking special. We all want to be important. And how can you be special and important if we're all just like, vanilla palatable to everyone? It's like, it cannot help but create dissonance in people.
Speaking of dissonance, I wonder, so I totally hear the reservations about woo-woo-ness, and I think you're speaking for tons of people out there who have those same reservations. And I thought it might be fun just for a few minutes to think about something that I think about often, which is that so magic is supposed to sound stupid, right? Like if I say, oh, it works by magic, that's supposed to be fucking stupid.
Yeah.
And yet, what that means, what it means to do something by magic, one way of thinking about it is it means to work at the level of the invisible to affect changes in the visible. So to work at the level of the symbolic, at levels of emotion, at level of thinking and feeling that then create changes in the physical world. But that's completely how our world is run. So Hollywood movies, popular music, commercials, it's all symbols, it's all mantras, it's all magic. And most of it is a very, what I would call dark magic, in the sense that it encourages the incoherence of disconnecting people from their hearts, from their truth, from their own inner knowing, and trying to connect them up to something else, some other cultural program to put them in service of
Dark wizards.
banks who are dark wizards. And that's what they do. They spend their time thinking, how can I get people disconnected from their truth? And how can I make them basically enthralled in this web of falsehood and incoherence? So I'm passionate about people realizing that the world does run on magic, that rather than it being a stupid or an embarrassing thing to get serious about one's magic, it's a super realistic thing. Because the thing is uh, in order to take responsibility for one's own experience, for authoring one's own magical experience, you have to admit that's what you're doing. You have to choose to do it. Read those law of attraction books. You got to get some kind of method going, because otherwise you're just completely at the mercy of these other people who are super skilled. They're not embarrassed at all that it's magic. They are doing whatever they can. It's an onslaught. It's an assault. So yeah, I'm excited because I think there is a large renaissance of people like your listeners who have been passionate about magic through novels and imagination their whole lives, who are like yourselves, are beginning to connect the dots and realize that they themselves have plenty of magical power to wield. And as we all grow in that realization and cease blaming each other, and yeah, when I talk about these, I'm like, it's not that I'm seeking revenge against them, because that's not going to work. That's the same old game. That's why it's not a good versus evil thing. I need to recognize that in myself and integrate it and love it and become coherent with it. And the more I do that, the less affected I am by it. Anyways, I'm just super pumped for everything. I'm so happy to
I
talk
love
to you.
that perspective, Carolyn, because I do think it is a needed it's needed to be told that magic is practical and realistic, and that it's not just a fantasy, and that we can be practicing it, and that we are, in fact, we're not talking about victims in this conversation. We are not victims of dark wizards, but I think there's an old way of being that maybe hasn't got off enough yet. But there's an old way of being in the collective, as you're saying, that we just like to be told what to do, just like people in a BDSM bedroom. It's like, just tell me what to do and then tell me I'm a good girl. I don't think that's just me. I mean, it might be a specific kink for me, but I think as a collective for many, many, many years, we have all been kind of getting off on this, just tell me what to do.
Be the victim.
And I'll be the victim. And then you tell me I'm a good girl or a good boy. And so, yeah, these dark wizards, we're not victims of them. We're just still getting off on these dark powerful people just telling us what to do and what to think and what to buy and how to try to pursue happiness. And we're not getting off on it anymore. And if we can just get in touch with that and get clear about it, we can start getting off on other things.
Yes.
Yeah,
How inspiring.
I love this. I feel like we're going to have like a note at the beginning of the episode to be like, y'all better listen till the end.
Yeah. If you want to get the good juice, wait till the end. Carolyn, thank you so much for giving us your afternoon. So glad that your book is hopefully getting in the hands of so many people so that they can also feel the joy of getting off on life, because that's what it's all about.
Yes. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to meet you, Maddie and Kristen. This has been so fun.
thank you guys so much for listening. And if you are listening in a place where you can rate and review us, we would appreciate it so very much. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can like or subscribe. We will have all of Carolyn's links and resources listed in the description. So we encourage you guys to check those out, and definitely a link to her book, Existential Kink. We encourage you, if you're curious at all, just check it out and see if you don't have a really good time with it. It's short, but you'll have a lot of fun. You will do a lot of fun stuff with it. So thank you again, Carolyn, and thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, everybody.
And I bet we did good together. If I could just get over myself and give me a chance.